Well, it was during World War, but they're talking about World War II and wondering how things were going to go because we knew that there would be plenty of men that would have to go. And it was about that time that I met, I can't remember what the man's name was, but I knew him and I talked to him. But Jack and Carl were with him at that time that I ran into him. And he introduced me to him, and I wasn't too impressed or anything. And then one day, Jack asked me for run him again. Oh, I don't remember what it was we were at, but we were outside waiting to get in, and somebody just stepped on my heel and about pulled my shoe off and made me angry, and I didn't look to see who was. I just put my foot back and stomped them toes, and it was Jack. And he said, that's a fine way to meet. So, whatever it was that we were going to, we went to together. And I think it must have been a store, because I remember I was going to buy something, a gown or a slip or something like that. And I kept putting it off, and I decided that was the night I'd do it. So I guess I didn't pay too much attention. And the next time I think I must have gone to the Bowery, because there were about 4 or 5 of us girls would go to the Bowery, which was what do you call, tavern. And it was quite popular with all the people from the State House would come there. But we girls would go there and we'd get soft drinks. None of us drank liquor. And we'd talk and cuddle with those guys from the State House. Practically every one of them was married, had families, but that didn't stop them. And I know there was one from Chicago, and he was unusually ugly. His face was, I don't know, it was just an ugly face. And he used to always say, I must have been a beautiful baby, because baby, look at me now. And he'd always get people clapping for him. And there used to be a young boy coming to Bowery, and I know he must have wanted to play the drums, because he would get 2 drumsticks, and he could go all through the tavern, just a beating out time on things, and be different times. It was real good doing that he could do that. And they always had a floor show. And at that time, anybody come in the taverns, and there would be a lot of women there with babies, with children sitting there. They had rows of benches, well, like pews in a church. And the women sat there with their children while their men were another part of the tavern playing cards or just talking to one another. But uh, eventually Jack came there, and somehow or other he and the guy that owned the tavern decided that he could have a place in the basement where he could fix sandwiches and then sell sandwiches there, and which he did, and he made ham sandwiches. That was mostly what he made. And the guys from the State House, they all just thought those were the best ham sandwiches they ever ate. But what he did was boil the ham a good bit before he put it in the oven to bake. So it didn't bake so dry. It was nice and moist. And they were good. And I don't know, we got to talking one time when he was in there, and he asked me if I would serve him if he made them, when he made them, and served to the guys that wanted them. So I said I would. Well, that's where we got acquainted. And then one time this guy that introduced me to he and Carl, Jack and I were going together, and he was very intense about the fact that I would not date anybody else while I dated him. So I said I had no intention of doing so. So anyway, one night, this guy that introduced us, he sat there and told him and Carl a big story about what we did the night before when we were out together, and all about our date and everything. And the thing was, I was with Jack that night on a date, and he was telling Jack all about his date with me that night. So Jack finally realized the guy might be lying, because he happened to be out with me that night. He knew he would be lying. So anyway, we began seeing each other regular, and Ben came, and then he and Jack just got along fine. And Ben was very outspoken about if he didn't like if I dated somebody he didn't like, he let me know it. He didn't want anything to do with them. And so, anyway, Jack and I decided there wasn't much else to do in Springfield. There wasn't any jobs available, and everybody was signing up to go to the Army, and he wasn't ready to do that. So we decided we'd go to Indianapolis and see what was over there. So we packed a suitcase, and we didn't have any money for bus fare. We went out to the crossroads and stuck our thumbs up, and for a few minutes we got a ride. The man asked us where we were going, and we said we wanted to go to Indianapolis. Well, that's where he was going. So he drove us to Washington Street, and let us out below the dime stores. I don't remember exactly which one. But anyway, that was our introduction to Indianapolis.
When was that?
That was in 1940, I think.
And what was it? Was the weather bad, or was it?
It was nice.
So it was a summertime?
It was warm weather. I can't remember exactly when, but I know it was summertime. Because then we had to find a room. So there was a house across the way from Sears Roebuck, and it had a sign out the rooms, and I forget what else was on that lot. There was something else on there. Anyway, we got a room there, but it wasn't the best of rooms. So the next day we got out and looked for some, and we found one in the corner of Alabama, and I forget what street. And we took a room there. And if I wrote, then we went job hunting. And he got to work at a restaurant at Market and Illinois Street. And I got a job at the burger.
Was it the Steam Burger? Was it the Steam Burger?
It was some kind of a burger.
It was Steam Burger.
I can't remember.
I thought it was.
Let me think for a minute. It was. A Steam Burger.
Wasn't it Joe that owned it?
I think it was Steam Burger. And there was a theater across the street down in Illinois, and next door to the Steam Burger was next to the Steam Burger was I forget what kind of place it was. It was run by, it was something that was run by a Jew, and there was a little theater. I guess that was around the corner. Anyway, we worked different hours, but I would leave notes for Jack, and I'd put them inside of a sock or something. But the landlady always knew what I had written and would tell him when they came in. And it made me mad. And I didn't like the idea of her doing that. And anyway, that for some reason, I might have said something, probably did, about her stupid in there. Because when I come home one day, she painted the room black. The ceiling, the wall, everything was black. Mm. And I thought, that's enough of that stuff. So I got out to look for a room, and that's when I found Mrs. Gamp. But she didn't allow any babies, any children in the house. And I said, well, I had plenty of time to look for a place. and because I just was probably just about, I didn't show that I was pregnant, but I said I was, and it was about the first month, and I wanted to get out of that black room anyway, and so we moved over there to this camp, and Irene worked at a restaurant. She baked the pies, so she left at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then Annie lived in the next building, but she'd always come over there and visit with. She was friends with Mrs. Gamp, and I can't think of the other woman's name that lived next door, and she would come over, and they had a kind of nice front porch from the thing that faced Illinois Street. They could sit out there, and it really was kind of nice, but Jack didn't like it. Just too many old women around there. So he went and got a place on Vermont Street. And I said I wouldn't move because I liked it there, and the women were all nice to me. And so I stayed there, and he'd come over and sometimes spend 2 or 3 nights, and then he'd go back over there and stay. And I worked too. I kept working at the Steamburger, and then I got sick one day and went home, and the guy that owned the Steamburger asked me what was the matter, and wanted to know if there was anything that I'd be off work a lot. And I told him I was pregnant. And that's this morning sickness. So anyway, he said, well, his wife was having the same problem, and he thought if I could come in a little later and be there every day, why, there's no reason why I should quit. So I stayed, and when Jim was born, Mrs. Gamp decided I didn't know anything about babies. And I didn't put undershirts on him. He wasn't warm enough. Well, it was in September, and he was warm enough. And I wasn't feeding him right, although I was breastfeeding him and getting baby food and oatmeal. And when he was getting old enough to feed himself, I gave him a spoon, and he took the oatmeal and just slammed it right back in my face. And I smacked his head. Oh, Miss Gamp got on me. Don't I ever slap that baby again. And oh, how I mistreated him by doing that. So I had to watch myself and not correct him when she was anywhere near, because he was a perfect baby and he didn't need any correction from me. Even if he threw the whole bowl at me, it wouldn't make any difference. But then I knew when I was going to be working steady, that I'd have to hire somebody. So I hired a lady, an older lady, and she'd be late, and I'd ask her to try to be there a little early so I could get to work early one time. But there was a theater along there on Illinois someplace that showed, I don't know what kind of pictures they were, but she thought she liked to see them because she thought the human body was beautiful, and if they exposed themselves with their pictures, well, that was perfectly all right because the body was beautiful. And the way it was made and put together and everything. So anyway, I came home one time and she had his diapers hanging on the heating stove.
Ooh.
And I asked her not to do that again, but she did it again. She wanted the diapers warm for him, and I was afraid it was going to catch on fire. They would have if they'd been left there. And so I told her that I didn't want her to take care of him any longer. So Irene said, well, she goes in 4:30 and she comes home. She would look after him and everything. Well, I finally found a woman who said that she'd take care of him, but I had to bring him to her house, and I had to carry him. And I don't remember where it was, but I know I passed that fire, where the big fire stations were, the next block from Sears. And I know I went past that. And I got there one morning, and she said, well, I'm not taking care of babies anymore.
Oh my goodness.
And I was on my way to work. I was working at that stocking place that used to be over there in that area. I can't, they made silk stockings, some kind of stockings anyway. And I worked there, so I had to quit because I couldn't carry him around in all kinds of weather and have people on. So finally, Jack came back and he said that he'd buy a house. Annie told him about a house. And he said he'd buy one. And we got our first room house on North Street. Right off it, about the third one off Illinois Street. And Annie took him over and introduced him to the bed that had it, and he sold it to Jack, all furnished as it was. And it had a lot of antique furniture in it. And it had a closet full of had vacuum cleaner and did all kinds of cleaning things. And it had a nice wash machine and rinse tubs in the basement, and a middle room in the basement, which was empty, and which I put clotheslines in, and had a furnace and a little water heater stove, and it was furnished. It was 2 stories, and had a back stairway and a front stairway and a double room across the front and a bathroom upstairs and a toilet at the end of the hallway. And I think it had, I know it had 2, 3, 4 bedrooms upstairs beside the double room. And downstairs was the kitchen and a bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and I don't think it had a living room. Anyway, it had a big hallway, and then the front was the hallway, and that's where the closet was. It had the vacuum cleaner and iron and all ironing board things in. And there was one woman living there, and she was going through the closet and deciding what she was going to call her own, like the ironing board and the iron and the vacuum cleaner. And Jack told her that he bought and paid for that, and she wasn't to bother the stuff. And we made her move. And it was no time, and Joe and Mary took the front rooms, and I gave them 2 rooms, a bedroom and a kitchenette, and a place where they could sit. And there was just the one bathroom, but there was a bedroom next to that, and I rented that to a man who left the farm and took a job in one of the factories here in town, or something had to do with the war material. And then I had a bed, just a small bedroom at the back of the house on the 2nd floor. And this man moved in there. I forget what he did, but he stayed a good many, a couple of years. And he was a very good tenant. He always was ready to pay. Then we had a couple in another room that had a cooking space and a living space and a bedroom all together in one big room. So, and downstairs in the front room was a man, I forget, but he told us to call him Uncle something, and I don't remember what, Uncle. And he stayed there a good long time. So I had Ben and Jim to look after when Jack went to the army while I was there. And he was stationed on the East Coast. I forget where. But anyway, I was able to manage to pay the rent for the house and look after the yard and everything. And anyway, the back porch was closed in, and we didn't have much of a yard, just a little spot in front of the porch. And just a sidewalk back from the front to the back porch, and stepped up on the porch, and that's where I kept the refrigerator and the ice box rather. And for some reason or other, there was this woman. I think she needed just wanted for a short time, and I rented to her, and she was so thankful for it and liked it, and a couple of times I went out to the refrigerator, to the ice box, and there were nice steaks in there. Her husband was a cook in the army, and he'd sit and she'd get steaks from him and bring them to me. And Ben was big enough then, he was carrying a paper. And I think I don't remember if he was carrying the Times or the Star, but anyway, whichever paper he was carrying, he received a turkey for Thanksgiving. So I had some young kids there who lived there too, and I invited them all, if they had no place to go for Christmas, to all be there for dinner. And I served a turkey, and I was able to get potatoes and all the trimmings and everything. And we had a nice Thanksgiving dinner, and they all just loved that song, thought it was wonderful. And they kept trying to bring their friends there to live. I didn't have enough room for them all. And I know this one boy that came. He had his uncle came and wanted a room. Eventually he moved in when somebody left. And several of them had someone in the family who moved in. So I never had any problem getting roomers, but this one man that came took the front room when it was empty. I don't know where the man moved to, that would be called Uncle, and it wouldn't be called Uncle something. Anyway, this man moved in, and he was from Germany, he said. And his mail came under a couple of different names, and then one time someone knocked on the door and asked for somebody whose name I hadn't heard. And I said, no, there's no one living here with that name. And he heard us, he was right there in the front room, right next to the front door. And he said, oh, I go by that name because it's easier to spell and to say than my real name. And which wasn't true at all. His real name was whatever was easier to say and to spell. But I let it go at that, and the men went in and they did their business, whatever it was. And I know I mentioned it to the woman next door in her room, and she had somebody on the top floor that left in the middle of the night, but left some kind of broadcasting stuff in the ring. But we never knew who these foreigners were. And it was quite a thing to run a rooming house and try to keep it right. So anyway, I kept the rooming house going, and Jack come home from the army by. He decided that we needed a bigger place. So he went scouting around and they found the Alabama Street House. So we moved over there, but he left the washer and dryer and things in Illinois Street, or North Street. And at that time, Ben got a job working for the little grocery store. It was on Illinois Street, and it was owned by Jews. And they wanted him to work. He asked them if they had a job, and they said they had work for him, but they would be closed on Friday or Saturday.
Probably Saturday.
Saturday
is their Saturday.
But they'd be open on the Sunday. But Ben, if he would work for them, he should go to church on Sunday morning or to Sunday school, whichever he went to, and then come to work. But he must not miss church or Sunday school to work. So we let him go at that, and Ben worked for them for quite a long time, and he liked working for them. But in the meantime, I was doing all this work with the rooming house, cleaning it and taking care of things. And we moved to Alabama Street. It was altogether different thing. Gosh, I got a pair of girls, and I didn't know they were gay. There was no such thing like that discussed back then. But they were, and when I came in one day, one had the other bending her back over the railing to the upstairs. I said, quit that. I said, you're going to break her back. Well, that's what I'm trying to do, she said.
Oh my goodness.
And they were having I told them both to move. I wasn't going to put up with that kind of stuff. So they moved, and then an old retired sailor moved in the room that they had.
Was that Mr. McAvoy? Mr. McAvoy?
That might have been in it. I think that's who it was.
I remember some of these people.
Yeah, I think it was Mr. McAvoy. Yeah, he went out one morning and was just a couple blocks from the house. I saw the ambulance pull up, and I thought, oh, I hope nothing happened to him. He was out, and he was getting up in years, and he had a heart attack and died on the street. And his brother came to get things, and I told him when he started to get his books and things, and he was kind of pitching things around. I said, you better look at those books before you decide whether you're going to keep them or not, because I said, that's where he always hid his money, was in his books. So his brother thanked me for that, and he found quite a sum of money that the guy hadn't put in there. But he left about everything else there in the room. He said he had no way to dispose of it, and there's nobody who would want it. So I got rid of it. I guess I stuck it in a Salvation Army bag took it there. But well, he had a set of tools I kept, little axe and hammer and screwdriver, such things. And a toolbox they were in I kept. But I always had a pretty good bunch of people.
Do we want to stop? Okay, we'll stop.